They taught us to mistrust our own bodies, to silence the tremble, to push through the pain, to call exhaustion excellence and survival success. But this body, our bodies, these beautiful breathing vessels, remember. They remember the songs hummed under breath, the pathways towards freedom whispered between shifts, the generations who never stopped saying that it is our right to feel free inside our own flesh. So today we remember too. We return to our bodies. We reclaim our right to rest. We name this healing exactly what it is: ancestral remembering. So, welcome everyone to episode 6 of my On Freedom podcast. This episode is called The Racial Origins of Overriding Our Bodies, Reclaiming Our Bodily Sovereignty as Ancestral Healing. Welcome if you're here live. Thank you for joining me. Yes, I see Kiana's here. Welcome. Please subscribe to Kiana's channel, y'all. Level Up Single Mom. Thank you so much for being here. But yes, this topic is very near to me, right? And it is Somatic October. So I decided to name this month Somatic October because I've just been getting more into understanding how trauma lives within our bodies, right? And even thinking about this ancestrally, the wounds that have never been healed, right? Because we've never had a chance to really slow down and understand the impact of slavery, right? Of colonization, of being ripped away from our homelands. And the impact of that on our bodies is not small. And it's passed down through generations, right? The field of epigenetics is dedicated to this, studying this. How do we carry both trauma and all of this knowledge and wisdom, right, that we carry within us as well, which is passed down through generations. And so the messaging that this was in the past, it can be confined to the past, is simply incorrect. That's a lie. That's a lie, right? Because it's passed down in our DNA. So I'm carrying with me all of these ancestral memories, which is why, right, we feel these things that we don't necessarily have words for, but we just know. We have this deep knowing, right? And so our ancestors are living within us all the time. Hello, hello. Welcome to Sean. Yes, I was a farmer at my previous nonprofit position, but felt more like a slave under the nonstop overworking that was enacted upon me by my white Christian male boss. It broke my body down. I'm so sorry. In the day, put my 2 weeks, I injured my neck. Oh, man. And when I returned to finish out my last 2 weeks, my boss continued to overwork me. It was the most toxic job I've ever had. I'm so sorry. I am so sorry. Hmm. Just taking a moment right there because, wow, that's a lot. That's a lot. And thank you so much for sharing this, right? Unfortunately, I know that many of us can relate to this pressure. And as you mentioned, it being tied up with religion, right? That we're supposed to overwork to be closer to God, right? Which is so deeply wrong in so many ways. But it's so deeply ingrained, right? And I would love to talk more about this topic because I don't think it's talked about often enough. This fear that's created around resting, around joy, right? These things that a lot of us are now having to take off, shed these layers that have been so deeply ingrained into us and reinforced through violence, as you mentioned, right? So it's not like we're imagining these things. These things are actually enforced by people's hands so often, right? Under these doctrines, under these things that we've been told to, that we have to adhere to, or else. That is a level of fear that people have created around these things, right? Religion being a major one. So thank you so much for sharing that. I'm so sorry that that happened to you. Yeah. Yeah. Sending you hugs. Yeah. Yeah. Whew. Just taking a breath here, y'all. Yeah. I'm feeling called to reread the poem. So if you're just joining, I just read like a short intro to this, but I feel like I need to read it again. So I'm gonna do that. So they taught us to mistrust our own bodies, to silence the tremble, to push through the pain, to call exhaustion excellence and survival success. But this body, our bodies, these beautiful breathing vessels, they remember. They remember the songs hummed under breath, the pathways towards freedom whispered between shifts, the generations who never stopped saying that it is our right to feel free inside our own flesh. And so today we remember too. We return to our bodies, we reclaim our right to rest, we name this healing exactly what it is: ancestral remembering. Yes. Thank you for joining Quest Wings in Space. Did you rename yourself? Because I love this name. But I remember your emoji, your picture. Yes. I was just thinking about, imagine not being able to have fun or rest or relax for 400 years. It was a thought that popped in my mind early this morning as I was meditating on my internal feelings. Thank you for sharing that. Yes. Centuries. We're talking about centuries here, right? And so please give yourself grace if this feels impossible to do. This is a journey I've been on, asking myself, why does it feel impossible for me to lay down? All these feelings of guilt, right? That I should be doing something. These messages have been so deeply ingrained. And again, they're passed down generation to generation. So it's not just me and my life experiences that I'm having to unlearn and shed. This is, as you said, thank you, 400 years of ancestral memories that I hold within my body. The field of epigenetics tells us this, that I'm now having to confront, right? And so many of us have been selected, I think, within our lineages to challenge these messages of oppression, right? Which is why it resonates so deeply when one of us shares something, right? And I'll be like, wow, I've never heard that said out loud, but I feel the exact same way. It's very hard for me to rest. Still, right? Even as a social worker, even as a healing practitioner, I'm still unlearning and shedding and healing my lineage, right? As I've shared before, having people in my family pass away very early, right? Now I know at this age, as I'm learning, as I'm studying, the trauma passed down from generations, right, was probably a direct reason why. And so we're seeing our lifespans being shortened. And we're exposed to toxicity, we're exposed to hostility, the chaos that's being intentionally created with this result in mind, right? It's not an oversight, it's very intentional. They want to extract our labor, right? And once they don't have our labor, then they're like, there's no use for you. With the roots being in enslavement. And so anytime we think about why does the work environment in the US look the way that it does, the roots are enslavement. And I talk often about, right, toxic jobs, having shared my own experience in a toxic job. And it's that same model of use and discard. Use you for your labor, right? When I see that I can't really use you in the way that I want to for my marketing materials, then I'm going to discard you. Then I'm going to make you believe that you're not worthy. And it's the same pattern at play. Having studied systems of oppression in graduate school, which I'll be speaking more about, these are systems at work, right? But they're working behind the scenes. So it can feel like, is this real? Am I imagining this? Why is this so difficult? Right? And then we internalize what's happening to us when the whole time it's a system, multiple systems at play, right? The Theory of Intersectionality by Kimberly Crenshaw. multiple intersecting systems at play for Black women and femmes who are experiencing this day after day after day, but we're internalizing it as if something wrong with us. And I hope like the core message of my channel is really to emphasize it's not you. Once you're able to really sit with that truth, healing can begin. You realize it was never you. It was people trying to take you down because they see how powerful you are. It's not a question of them thinking that you're not powerful. It's the exact opposite. They're seeing how powerful you are. And so just want to say that. Yeah. Yes, thanks for reading my message out loud. You and Dr. Kamani have made me feel so seen. It's healed me. Thank you, Deshawn. Thank you for sharing this. Yes. And many thanks to Dr. Kamani, my co-creator of the Job Liberation Virtual Summit for Black Women. We have our 2026 summit coming up in May of 2026. So we are planning that behind the scenes. But yeah, this has been a project that I didn't even know it was going to go this deep, right? It's brought me back to ancestral healing, the value or the different ways that Black women's labor has been devalued throughout history, to understand what I experienced in the workplace, and then what unfortunately, all the stories that we have heard of Black women globally, what we have experienced in the workplace. This is not just one of us, a few of us. It's actually like pretty rare that one of us have not had a toxic job experience. Trying to break our spirit, trying to make us question our worth, right? Impacting our mental health, our physical health, not being able to sleep, affecting our appetite from a job. And so thank you so much for sharing that. Yeah. Okay, yes, I name myself. I like to learn and expand myself as much as I can. I love that. Thank you for sharing. Yes. Expansion. Yes, that's the word I've been into. Expansion. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah. I'm grateful that my eyes are being opened now and healing has begun. We are not going back. Rest is resistance. Absolutely. Yes. My eyes are being opened now. Woo, that's powerful. Yes. Doesn't it feel like that? Do you all feel that energy too? Like it's a collective remembering? Because I think the things that we're seeing that are so glaringly obvious, that have been under the surface for so long, and we've been gaslit, right? That it's not really happening. You're imagining it. People are not really mistreating you. They want you there. The whole time we're feeling this in our bodies, which is why somatic healing is so important, that no, they don't want us here. But we're being fed this messaging that they do, right? And so we're seeing it on full display. No, they actually never did. And it can be disappointing, disheartening. And at the same time, it's been like extremely healing for me, right? To really sit with that truth. That this was like lies the entire time. Right? Which is why we're being impacted. We're being sold one thing that's untrue. We're entering into these environments with the best of intentions, right? With language, often, if you are in the social work space, helping space, right? A lot of our language from Black liberation movements has been co-opted by these organizations. And so they're using the language of Black freedom movement, but they're doing the exact opposite, which can be extremely confusing. And unfortunately, as Black women, we're often placed in these roles to lead these initiatives. And it can do a number on our bodies, spirits, mental health, right? Because they're not operating in truth. So I want to say that as well. Yeah. It is a collective awakening. It is. Thank you for sharing this. Yes. I feel it, y'all. Okay, so let me get to my notes. And thank you so much if you're here live or if you're watching the replay. Thank you. This is the 6th episode of On Freedom, right? For Somatic October, which if you're on my email list, I just sent a few different things that'll be happening this week in this month as well. As we come back into our bodies, I'm reading The Body Keeps the Score finally by Bessel van der Kolk. And just really tapping into indigenous knowledge as well, right? When it comes to understanding how trauma lives in our bodies. In the Western context, we are told that it solely lives in our minds. And that doesn't provide the full level of healing that so many of us are seeking, because we still have the imprint within our bodies of what happened to us. And not just from our individual life experience, right? But from our ancestors' experiences that have been passed down. And so how can the body be a source of healing? How can we tap into the abilities that it has to heal that we have not been taught? It's been kept from us. And so that's what I've been getting into this month. So thank you for joining us for Somatic October. I will be hosting a healing circle later this month on Sunday, October 26th at 5 p.m. Eastern. If you would like to join us, let me make sure I have that time correct because I did change the time. Yes, 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Pacific, if you'd like to join us. And I'll put the link in the chat. It's pay what you can. So no, cost is not a barrier, right? And if you're on the landing page to register and you see the different tiers, just scroll down if those tiers are too high to register with the pay what you can option. So getting back into our bodies is so important. Trauma lives in our bodies, right? It lives in our bones. As I shared in my last episode of On Freedom, something I learned about recently, ancestral bone mapping, which was this new concept that just completely opened my imagination, right? Our bones tell the stories of what happened before us. And our bones are the things that survive, right? When our bodies go through the process after we pass away, right? Our bones are still there. And so what can they tell us about what we experienced, what we survived? The level of resilience, yes, knowledge, healing, where we come from. It lives in our bones. So this conversation is inspired by Fearing the Black Body, The Racial Origins of Fatphobia, by Dr. Sabrina Strings, which I have been reading in my Patreon and posting about it. So if you'd like to join us over there, I'll link the Patreon in the chat as well. And it's free to join. I've just been posting both to kind of hold myself like gently accountable to reading. I'll be speaking more about the brain, right? When you are in a traumatic situation, your amygdala takes over, right? And so now that I've had the chance to heal, my prefrontal cortex is coming back online. So I've been able to read again, like process deep information. And so I've just been sharing my thoughts on this book as I've been reading it in my Patreon. So here's the link to my Patreon if you'd like to join that. Right. And so this book, Fearing the Black Body, is a powerful work that uncovers how racism, fatphobia, and colonialism intertwine to shape the way that we see and treat our bodies, our sacred vessels. And so, as I said, when I think about, right, the people I've worked with, my clients, and I am a somatic healing practitioner. I'm leaning more into somatic, which is just related to the body, right? So having a background in social work, training in social work, they didn't teach us about this, right? And if you're listening to this and you're in the social work field, I would love to hear your experience too, because again, it was just about the mind. Any class that I attended related to practice, right? The social work practice, It was just about the mind, right? Talking through what you've experienced, which can be helpful. But there's a level of healing that you're not able to access because we still have the imprint of what happened to us within our bodies. Right? So if you have been in a toxic job, if you learn to keep smiling through the anxiety you might be experiencing, maybe stop eating during the day. We know that some of our basic functions are affected by toxicity. Just to survive another meeting, right? We're taught to silence our bodies to be seen as professional. That can be a whole other conversation, the word professional and what that actually means. We are carrying the impact of all of these things in our nervous systems and in our bodies as well. We learn to override our bodies because we were never allowed to just be in them, right? Within the context of enslavement and colonialism. I do want to emphasize that there was a time before this. So our history is not just limited to enslavement. What happened before this? Thousands of years of experiences, of history, of knowledge about the universe. I just spoke about Afrofuturism in my past podcast, right? Drawing on the teachings of our ancestors prior to enslavement, who understood the universe very well. But we have been cut off from all of this knowledge, understanding, right? But we still feel that. We still feel a sense of misalignment operating in these systems. We don't necessarily have the words always, I'll speak for myself, to attach to it. But the feeling is enough. Right? The feeling is enough. We feel that it's misaligned. We feel that something is off. We feel that this is not the way that we were supposed to be living because there was a time before this. And so know when you have that feeling, might be an ancestral memory coming up. To refrain from gaslighting yourself, right? If everyone around you is telling you this is just how it is, this is how it's always been, know that that's not true, right? That's what we've been sold. That our history just started at enslavement. Who does that benefit? What knowledge are we cut off? What understanding are we cut off from if we are to believe that? Thank you for joining Alchemical Impress. I love that name. Yes, trauma was always meant to process out of our bodies. As I spent time with the indigenous in Central America doing ayahuasca, I realized that our ancestors had various ceremonies to move energy out. Thank you for sharing this. Yes, we were never meant to hold trauma in our bodies for years at a time. Whew. Thank you. That's the truth. Yep. Yeah. And thank you for bringing this up. So these practices, while they have been buried intentionally from a lot of us, there are still indigenous communities throughout the world that are still practicing these things. So it's not like it's just gone forever. It's still very much a thing, but it's just been cut off from us so often. So we have to intentionally lean into what are people doing? What are the practices that are still being done that we can learn from? As you said, to sit with the truth. Trauma was always meant to process out of our bodies. Indigenous communities, nations throughout the world have always known this. Right? But there's been a dominant worldview that has been impressed, like pushed, forced on us, that we're operating in, that we have that feeling in our bodies. This is not how things are supposed to be. All these ancestral memories trying to like come up, right? There was a time before this. There was a time when we operated with the cycle of nature to flow. But when we're in these environments that are telling us, right, Sometimes that is crazy, right? Sometimes that we're doing something wrong, that will be punished, that it's evil, right? Our ancestral practices are evil, and this isn't. Yikes. This isn't what we see happening, right? But we're told, no, this is the right way. It's so deep, y'all. It's so deep. And so I really appreciate you sharing that. Yeah, there are still indigenous communities throughout the world that we can learn from. Absolutely. And so I just want to take a deep breath here. This breath work can be very powerful to heal your nervous system, to come back into your bodies. So inhaling here, exhaling. Know that you're being supported. You don't have to hold it all together right now. There's a lot going on in the world. So again, I appreciate you if you are here live, if you're watching the replay. Thank you. I do not take that for granted. So in Fearing the Black Body, right, Dr. Strings has shown us how thinness and discipline were moralized, made synonymous with purity, whiteness, and self-control. Meanwhile, so often Black women's bodies were labeled as excessive, right, in need of, in quotes, taming, sometimes inhuman. So it's always been about the control of our bodies to maintain this hierarchy that has been forced on us, about deciding whose humanity counts. Our ancestors learned, unfortunately, right, that showing pain could cost them their safety. That rest was labeled as laziness. That could be a whole other podcast topic, right? Laziness, right? Not a human need for your life to be sustainable. We look at any other living thing, they need rest to sustain the journey. Our lives were never looked at as something to be sustained within the context of enslavement, right? Just our labor. I don't care about your life. I just want your labor. And so even viewing it through that lens, when you feel yourself having difficulty resting, coming into your body, please understand the roots of that, right? Instead of going into a pattern of self-judgment, understand how deep these roots run and how it's constantly being reinforced within the society. That when you need to rest because you're a human being, something is wrong with you. Right? That vulnerability, that expressing your emotions could be punished. It could open you up to being brutalized. And I have to say, right, traveling abroad now, over the past 2.5 years, I've been able to see that and really connect the dots, right? People expressing emotion openly, right? Hugging, greeting people very openly without this fear that I still have attached to me, right? That I have to put on this shell, right? And starting to unpack, where did that come from, right? Because I see other people openly expressing affection. And I have to remember, okay, this was something that left you open to punishment and being brutalized, right? During enslavement. And so we learned this over generations to protect ourselves. Got to harden up, right? You got to put on additional layers You can't express emotions. You can't tell someone, right? Or express this level of feeling. Because the enslaver will look at that as an opening, right? Okay, this is an opening I can use to inflict punishment. That's a level of inhumanity that we're healing from, right? So these messages did not vanish, right? They turned into things that we experience day after day. Microaggressions, right? Aggressive behavior. These archetypes that are inhuman, that are inflexible, that don't allow us to fully express our humanity. Being told to quiet down, tone it down, right? You're doing too much. Be a team player. When we're simply trying to survive these environments that we're in that were never created for us. Over generations, our bodies learned it's not safe to be fully yourself. And we still hold those memories within our bodies. They don't go anywhere, right? Which is why it's so important to begin to process. Many of us, for the first time within our lineages, within the context of enslavement, right? So centuries, over 4 centuries, many of us are the first people now within our lineages to begin to process what happened and to tell the truth. And so we have learned to override our bodies, to overwork for that external approval, that again, the basis of that is a lie. And so we're seeking all of these things out externally to try to what? Counter a lie, right? Counter what was projection. Thank you to Alicia Renese, right, for saying that. Projection is oppression. All these things that have been projected onto us as a people over centuries. And we're still being taught that we have to try to convince people that we're not lazy, that we're valuable. The whole time it's a lie, right? It's a projection. And so even healing that part within ourselves can help us begin to lean into our humanity, rest, right? Inviting joy. If we understand that this whole time, what we've been being told were lies, right? We stay silent even when our bodies are screaming for basic needs, rest, fresh food. That could be a whole other, that just brought up food apartheid, right? Fresh air. All of these things that we need for our lives to be sustainable over the long term. But again, we have been taught that our lives are not supposed to be sustainable, that that's for other people, right? That it's just our labor, that we're here on earth. We're here on earth just for our labor to be exploited. And so something to sit with, right? Hey, Ayabode. Welcome. Yes, there are numerous circles of women in these states who practice ancestral, ritual, and culture. Absolutely. Thank you. Yes. Deshaun says there are indigenous communities in this, yes, colonized country we call America that still practice these ways as well. Many are very discreet, though, after years of being persecuted, ceremonies at night. Thank you for this. Yes. Absolutely. Yes. Yes. And I always have to give thanks to my indigenous peers in my graduate school program. I believe it was called, the Booter Center for Native and Indigenous Social Work, right? That exposed me to so many different ways of community work, of healing that I had not been aware of. Of course not, right? Of course, they're going to keep this information from us. And to be able to connect it, right, to my own ancestral lineage and the practices that still continue throughout this world. And as you said, a lot of them having to be done in secret for protection. And we see the ways, because one of the things, as I'm working with Black women who are interested in launching digital businesses, this fear of visibility is very real and something I'm still working through, right? But it's a protective measure. This just reminded me of this. To protect ourselves in these environments, we have to go within, right? We can't be seen necessarily in our full selves because that has meant violence. It has meant people targeting us. And so that's real. That's rooted in very real experiences that now we've learned, our bodies have learned to go into protective mode. Whenever I sense something even remotely familiar, and part of the work of healing, right, is consciously telling your body, I'm not in this environment anymore. This is a new space. These are different people, because it still has that imprint of what happened to you in the past. And so it's going to put on those same protective measures as a way to preserve your life and your health. The part of healing, right, is slowly, because this is a process over time, telling yourself, I'm in a different environment, right? I'm an adult. So many of us have experienced childhood trauma where we didn't have the agency to leave a harmful environment. And so now as an adult, having to tell myself, okay, now I can extract myself from this place, from this, right, environment that doesn't feel good, that's harming me. Whereas before, right, so not gaslighting ourselves, I did have to stay because I didn't have agency. At this age, adult supremacy is a huge, huge thing to talk about too, right? The lack of agency that children have within the society. But to remind yourself that now at this age that you can make your exit from an environment that's harming you. You don't have to stay and endure, right? And that's not the right way. That's the message of oppressors. That's the right way to harm our bodies, to experience the consequences mentally, physically, spiritually of toxicity, to not exercise our human, right, ability, our right to leave. That's the right way. No. And so some of these things, as they come up in my own experience, as you're unlearning, other things will be revealed that are much more clear. And you'll see the connecting points and you'll be able to sever that as well, right? Okay, that's also rooted in that, and that is too, and that is too. And that's really the process of like freeing yourself, right? It's severing these ties, these anchors in our oppression that come from so many different angles. Woo. So yes, thank you so much for sharing that. Oh, no worries. I'm late to this conversation, but I'm great. I'm so grateful that you all are being proactive about reclaiming your legacy as women of spirit. Thank you. Thank you so much. That means a lot to me. Thank you. Yes. Yes. Quest wings and spaces. We also need a way to express our creativity too. Imagine not being able to do that for 400 plus years. Yes. We were never allowed to be soft, not with ourselves or others. Thank you. Yes. And so we see the impact of this, the magnitude things that we've never really had space to process over 4 centuries plus. And so we see how deep this runs. So again, if you're experiencing, why is it so difficult for me to rest, to come back into my body? Why does it feel so unsafe? So not only are you healing from your individual life experiences, you may also be healing from ancestral experiences as well. And so grace and self-compassion are in order. So many of us enter workplaces that demand productivity over presence, obedience over authenticity. We internalize the idea that if we just perform well enough, right, for other people's approval, speak more softly, produce faster, stay later, maybe we'll finally be safe. Maybe we'll finally be viewed as fully human. All right, but it's the same logic that has governed our labor for centuries. The logic that stems from the plantation system, right? The demand that our worth be proven through our exhaustion. And this can show up as physical symptoms: migraines, insomnia, panic attacks, grief. We're given what, maybe if we're lucky, 1 to 2 days to grieve, right? That's not the way that, as I'm studying indigenous practices of grief, right? This can be a months long, years long process. But within these systems, we're told you get 1 to 2 business days. It's misaligned, right? We're afraid that slowing down will cost us our jobs, any sense of safety that we've been able to establish within these systems. And that's rooted in real experiences. And when our bodies finally do tell us that I can't go anymore, right? You can't push me any further, because our bodies are very rebellious. What we're experiencing is our bodies rebelling against oppression, right? So you're telling me this message that I need to keep going, but our bodies will tell us I need to stop. And so we see how that friction created internally can create these types of illnesses that we're experiencing. We're suppressing what our bodies are telling us to do because the oppressive systems that we're in are telling us to do the opposite so often for safety, right? Safety in quotations. And it's true that the body can only be silenced for so long. And those of us who have experienced the physical health consequences of toxic environments, as I have, we know this to be true. At some point, our bodies are going to say, I can't do this anymore, right? I'm breaking down. Something I'll be talking more about, the dorsal vagal response within the polyvagal theory, if y'all are interested in nervous system, understanding the nervous system, which is a state we go into where it just feels like everything shuts down. When we've pushed ourselves so far past the point where our bodies have been telling us to stop, to slow down, there's a time when they will not go any longer. And so even viewing these things, right? The need to rest, your body telling you to slow down, and you feeling the need to push yourself past, right? No, I got to keep going. Taking a pause may be helpful and asking yourself, where's this message coming from? Because my body's telling me one thing, but I'm trying to override my body. The tension we feel, the anxiety, the insomnia, these are messages from our bodies saying, I can't do this pace anymore. I wasn't created to go this fast. I wasn't created to produce constantly without rest. Oppression tells us to go against our bodies, to work against our body's signals, which create these illnesses that we experience. And so maybe just asking ourselves the question, can we listen to our bodies before they break down? Ibo says, yes, yes, that is such a chilling thought. Yes, we owe it to our ancestors to reclaim our imagination and creativity. Absolutely. Thank you for this. Yes. So I do want to take a moment to share. If you're interested in joining us for Finding Calm in Chaos, a somatic healing circle for Black women and femmes, which is pay what you can, on October 26th, which I will be facilitating. Here is the link to register for that. It's also scrolling on the screen. And if you like to participate in some posts that I'm doing around the book that I'm reading by Dr. Sabrina Strings, Fearing the Black Body, you can join us on Patreon. And I've also I uploaded one reading from Toni Morrison so far, but that will be my place for sharing the articles that I come across, the books that I'm reading, right? So if you'd like to join us over there, here's a link to do that. It is free. Okay. To reclaim our bodily sovereignty, right, we declare, I am the authority of my body. I decide how I work, how I rest, and what I allow. And do you see how powerful that is, right? Even if you want to repeat that wherever you are, I'm the authority of my body. I decide how I work, how I rest, and what I allow. This reclamation, right, is rooted in something truly radical. These systems depend on our disconnection from ourselves. They need us too exhausted to imagine alternatives. So when we slow down, when we rest, when we breathe, we are disrupting the systems that want us to stay numb, disconnected, overriding our body signals. And so we're not doing this work just for ourselves, right? But for future generations as well. We're charting a new path, reclaiming ancestral knowledge. Every deep breath is an ancestral one. Every time we choose to rest instead of pushing ourselves, we honor our ancestors who did not have that choice. So just taking a moment together, right? Putting a hand on your chest if it feels comfortable. And this helps us ground in our bodies, and one on your belly, another hand on your belly. If it feels comfortable, inhaling, feeling your belly expand, and exhaling, feeling your shoulders soften. Reminding ourselves that this is ancestral healing, not through perfection, right? Because perfection does not exist in healing. It is an ever evolving process with lots of ups and downs, or performance, because this is just about you, right, in your lineage, but through presence. So presence over perfection or performing. By remembering that our bodies are not obstacles to overcome, as we're so often taught in this society, right? That our bodies get in the way of what we're supposed to be doing. No, they're actually telling us they're trying to keep us here for the long term. But we've been taught to override them. And so it can feel like an inconvenience. Why do I have to stop to rest, right? I have stuff to do. Because your body's trying to signal to you, right? I have to slow down. because it's trying to preserve your life for the longest time possible. And unfortunately, not everyone, right? The folks who created these systems wanted our lives to last for a long time. They didn't, right? They wanted our labor, not our lives. Labor, not our lives. But we are choosing to remember, right? And reclaiming our bodily sovereignty as ancestral healing. And so as we wind down this 6th episode of my On Freedom podcast, live edition, thank you so much for being here again. If you're here live or if you're watching the replay, thank you. I do want to remind you that I'm hosting a healing circle coming up Sunday, October 26th, 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Pacific. 90-minute healing circle called Finding Calm in Chaos, a somatic healing circle for Black women and femmes. It is a 90-minute, pay what you can virtual gathering where we'll soften hypervigilance, restore our breath, and learn what safety can feel like in our bodies again, even after years of operating in survival mode, right? That's the thing about neuroplasticity. Again, if y'all are interested in matters of the brain, it's never too late for the brain to learn a new pattern. It's elastic, right? So even if you've experienced so many traumatic events, even if you've been living in survival mode for decades, that doesn't mean it's too late. Because the brain wants to absorb this new information, right? Our bodies want to learn a new way. That's why they're constantly telling us to slow down. That's not by accident. They're trying to preserve our lives for the longest time possible, but we've been taught to go against our bodies, right? And view them as kind of annoying sometimes, a nuisance, something you have to work through, push past what your body is telling you. And we know that for so many of us, that winds up in illness. So that can't be true. Illness, premature death. And so if you're listening to this, know that you are carving a new path, both for you and for future generations, right? To go in a different direction than what we've been taught. And so the circle is for you if you've left a toxic job, if you're still in a toxic job, want to learn strategies to come back into your body. If you're recovering from burnout, or you just want to feel your breath again, know that this is a safe space for you on October 26th. As part of Somatic October, I'll be speaking more about matters of the body and healing from trauma, right? So just remember that you do not have to fix yourself. There's nothing wrong with you, right? Part of trauma-informed healing, which is what my practice is based in, is really sitting with that message, right? Instead of asking what's wrong with you, asking what happened to you. And we have not been afforded that opportunity to really ask ourselves, what happened to us, right? Not just us in this moment, but over the past 4 centuries, what happened to us? Right? And so freedom and liberation can really be accessed within the body, no matter what is happening externally, right? Which can impact our bodies, because one thing we cannot do is gaslight our bodies. So I do want to say that. But tapping into the ability that we have to heal, to process trauma using the tools that already exist within our bodies is a huge source of liberation. Hello. Yes, I did see that. Yes, thank you. Marissa, I reached out to you via email. I would love to have you on my channel. We have some wonderful overlaps. I also teach around stress via my yoga and meditation background. Yes, I did see that. I'm taking a break from scheduling, but yes, I will. Thank you for this reminder. I will go back and read that. Thank you. And please subscribe to Yoga Bliss Dance, y'all, for topics that overlap. Yes. Yoga, meditation, yes. Healing from stress. This is much needed. Thank you. And so as we close this episode of the podcast, I want you to remember that you were never meant to perform your way into belonging. Your worth should have never been measured by your output. You are not behind, you are healing. In every moment that you pause to listen to your body, to heed the signals it's trying to send you, every breath you take without apology is an act of reclamation and ancestral healing. And so thank you so much for being with me today. If you are here live, again, if you're watching the replay, thank you so much. Please subscribe to my channel. Please comment if anything resonated with you. Please register and join us if you're interested in attending the Healing Circle that I'll be facilitating October 26th, 5 p.m. Eastern, which will also be recorded as well if you can't attend live. And it is pay what you can. So please join us. The link is scrolling on the screen, also in the description section. And I will also be going live this week with 2 special guests. So Ife tomorrow at 7 p.m. Eastern. We'll be talking about coming home to our bodies. Ife is also she's leaning into, healing through the body as a fellow social worker. So she'll be speaking about, she has an offering for yoga as well that she'll be speaking about. And she'll also be joining us inside my Black Women Freelancers community for a workshop called Grounded, a restorative workshop for Black women freelancers the following Tuesday, October 14th, which we'll be speaking about tomorrow when she joins me live. And then on Thursday, I'll be speaking to Dara, who moved to Mexico from a leadership role in the US. And we'll be speaking about why it's hard to slow down when you're used to overworking, right? This pressure that a lot of us are under in our jobs to push ourselves past this point where our bodies are telling us to slow down, and just her experience of leaning into her creativity, right? She's an artist, so she'll be sharing more about her artwork and how that process has been healing, right? Through travel, through experiencing other cultures, as we've talked about today. So that will be Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern. I'll be sitting down with Dara to talk about that. So please join us for those events coming up. And yes, thank you for this. Yeah. And again, as we wind down, right, know that you are healing with your ancestors. And your body remembers freedom, right? All these signals that our bodies are sending us throughout the day that we've been taught to override, ignore, push through. That's really the knowledge, right? That's the ancestral memory. I know that I've had the question when I've started this process of how do I connect with my ancestors? Through the body can really be the first way. Through the messages that we're receiving, right? To slow down, to pause, to breathe. When again, so many of our ancestors did not have that choice. It was either push through, right? Or your life is ended sometimes. That's the level of inhumanity that we're talking about. And so now that we have this choice, what are we going to do with it? Right? So thank y'all so much for being here. Thank you for joining, Sarah. Thank you. And yes, the replay will be up if you missed the live podcast episode. But I want to again thank you for being here. I hope you have a beautiful rest of your day. And until tomorrow at 7 p.m. Eastern, I'll be here live with Ife talking about coming home to our bodies if you'd like to join us for that conversation. So until then, thank y'all so much. Talk to you later. Bye.